Hi, my name is Rebecca and welcome to Yarn and Pajamas. Today is another Hooked on Murder episode. Hooked on Murder is just a crochet and chat where I have a project to work on and I tell a true crime story while I'm working on it. So grab yourself a project to work on, be it crochet or knitting or diamond painting or watercolor, whatever project you want, and grab yourself something to drink. I'm drinking the same thing I feel like I'm always drinking, which is a strawberry lemonade. And we are going to get started. So today, we're not even going to leave the state of Indiana. We're going to stay right here in Indiana, but we are going to move west and go to South Bend, Indiana, and travel all the way back to 2015, and we are going to talk about the murder of Alma Del Real. I do have me some notes over here. So Alma was a 22-year-old young lady who lived in South Bend, Indiana. She had a job at Wells Fargo Bank. She was a cashier, or not a cashier, but a teller. But her true passion was makeup artistry. So her and her friend were getting ready to go to one of those big cosmetology conventions in Chicago. So on April the 14th of 2015, Alma's aunt Susanna contacted police to file a missing persons report. She said that Alma hadn't been to work in 2 days. So she had missed 2 days of work for no call, no show. So the detectives started investigating to find a timeline of when actually the last time someone had spoken to Alma was. Alma and a group of her friends had went out that prior weekend on Saturday night. They had went out dancing to a couple clubs, and then she was dropped off about 3:15 that morning by her friend Alberto Cruz. He was the last person to see her. The next day, her friend Crystal came over to her house at about 9 a.m. to pick her up because they were going to a convention, a cosmetology convention in Chicago. Crystal said there was no answer at her door. She kept knocking, she kept calling Alma's cell phone, and there was just no answer, so she went without Alma. She told police that it was weird that Alma didn't go because they had been looking forward to this event for a couple months, and they had planned to spend the whole entire day in Chicago doing other things as well. So police narrowed down that the last time that Alma was seen was when Alberto dropped her off at her house. They spoke with Alberto. He stated that he dropped her off about 3:15. He said about 5 to 7 minutes later, he received a FaceTime call from her, but he didn't answer it because he thought it was something like she wanted him to come back and pick her up and take her to get something to eat. And he was just very tired and wanted to go home, so he just ignored her phone call. He expressed guilt to the investigators over this because now he's fearing that Alma was in trouble and that she was reaching out to him for help and that he let her down. Detectives looked at phone records from him, like last pings and all of that, and his phone records lined up with the story that he told police, so they quickly moved on. There was a tip that was generated from the family. The family had a huge media presence. They had vowed to keep Alma's name in the press so that they could get more tips because they really didn't have anything to go on. So this family wages a massive campaign with the media, and tips start rolling in. And one of the tips that came in was that Alma might have been kidnapped as part of a human trafficking ring. The tipster said that he overheard 5 guys in Kmart talking about Alma and her disappearance, and said that the brother of one of those guys knew Alma and had requested that she be kidnapped for this ring. And he later stated to the police that he also seen Alma with his own eyes in Ohio at a hotel. Well, the police quickly get the FBI involved, because the FBI usually doesn't get involved with the random missing person, but they do when it concerns human trafficking. So the FBI starts their investigation, and they quickly determine that this man has never left the area, so that he couldn't have seen Alma like he was claiming. So they were getting ready to discredit his tip altogether, when another tip came in from another tipster who said that they seen Alma in a hotel, I think in Ohio, no, outside of Chicago. And this hotel is known for seedy stuff kind of going on. The investigators were on it. They hopped in their car and they're driving up to Chicago. So they get to the place, and the Chicago police have actually already investigated the tip. They had a call out to that hotel about that girl, and the police were like, yeah, she looks a whole lot like Alma, but that's not Alma. And actually one of the cops that had went to the scene in the hotel personally knew the girl that was said to be Alma, and he knew her through, she was a frequent runaway, and he has dealings with her, so he knew her name, who she was, and where she belonged. And he just said it was a coincidence that her and Alma had similar features. So now the cops are at a dead end. They have no new tips, and all of their promising leads have turned into a bust. So they decide to go back to the beginning. It had something to do with the night out. So they start questioning the friends again, and talking about if anybody was, following Alma. But all of the friends in the group that were out said they were all having a good time, that Alma was dancing, that nobody bothered them. A few guys bought her drinks because she was extremely pretty. She was beautiful. And so guys did send her drinks, but there was no one that was bothering her when they left the club. She left with Alberto. No one followed them home. So they go back to question Alberto, because Alberto was the last person to see her alive. So they're questioning Alberto, and they finally ask, hey, will you do a polygraph? We need to get you eliminated so we don't keep coming back to you. And he's like, yeah, sure. So they also ask, hey, can we have another look at your cell phone as well? And he asked why they wanted to do that. And they explained to him that they needed to eliminate him as a possibility for this, because they have nothing else to go on, and they need to eliminate him so that they can move on from him and not keep coming back to him. And he's like, sure, okay. So his phone goes to the people that have all of the smarts for that, and he gets hooked up on a polygraph, and he is deceitful on the polygraph. So now they start thinking, maybe there's more to Alberto than what the story is that he's telling us. So they question him again, and the detectives say that his story was very consistent from time to time, except for on one little fact, and it was about the FaceTime phone call that he received. He said in his original statement that Alma had FaceTimed him about 5 to 7 minutes after he left and that he ignored the phone call because he thought it was her wanting to go back out and he was too tired. Turns out, he says in his second or the next interrogation, he says that he didn't get the phone call from Alma, that the phone, he couldn't hear the phone ringing over the loud music on his way home. So the detective thought it was fishy that you would change the story over some little fact like that. So now they feel like there's something more going on with Alberto than what he's telling. Then the forensics come back from his cell phone, and they are not matching up with the story that he gave. He said that he just dropped her off and immediately left. That was around 3:15 in the morning. He left and didn't see her again. Well, his cell phone GPS location data shows a different story. Once they really looked at it hard and fast, they see that he stays at her house for more than 2 hours. And then he drives 40 minutes away from South Bend, south, to a town called Culver. And it's like a rural area. And then comes back home. The police detectives tell him all of this information. They're like, hey, your cell phone is saying you done this. So the story that you're giving us doesn't make sense. And he was adamant. He stuck to his story. And the police just kept drilling at him. Hey, your cell phone is telling us something different. And then he changed his story completely and said when he came to drop Alma off at her house, that the Mexican cartel was waiting outside her house and they kidnapped her. And they stole his truck that had his cell phone inside of it. Yeah, that's what he told them. And the police are like, that's bull. That's not actually what happened. And they thought that he was getting ready to break. He started getting emotional in the interrogation room. He asked for everyone to leave except for one investigator he had been talking to. That investigator thought, well, this is it. He's getting ready to crack. He's getting ready to break, and nothing happened. So the investigator took a moment and went outside, and the commander of the St. Joe Homicide Unit was standing outside, and he's like, hey, why don't you just ask him where her body is? See if he'll just take you to it. And the investigator was like, you know what, at this point, we really don't have anything to lose because we're not getting anywhere with him. The investigator goes back in and is like, hey, will you take me to her body? And Alberto's like, yeah. So they get in a vehicle and they drive to Culver, Indiana. And he tells them at a spot where to pull off at. And they pull off beside the road. There's a wooded area. And he's like, she's in there. So the cops get out. They start looking around. They think that maybe they're on a wild goose chase because they said they didn't smell anything. They didn't see anything. The lead investigator noticed the wind picked up and started to swirl around. And then he started smelling the unmistakable smell of death. So they went further into this marshy, woody area, and they found Alma's body inside. They immediately arrested Alberto and put him in jail. Alma's family was notified, and they were shocked that it was Alberto because he was such a close friend of Alma's. They never thought that he would hurt her. Her aunt Susanna said in the days when she was missing that he was a comfort to the family. He told them that they were going to find her, that everything was going to be all right, and she just never suspected that he would have hurt her like that. Alberto pled not guilty, and his case was taken to trial. His defense was that Alma died during a consensual liaison between the two. He said that they had gotten into an argument. He had grabbed her and she fell and hit her head and died that way. Prosecutors have pathologists that done the autopsy testify that she had no head wounds on her body, that's not what she had died of, because she would have skull fractures to indicate. Due to her decomposition, it was so bad they couldn't really tell the cause of death, but they do not suspect that it was a head wound because there was no indication on her skull, and they said that there would be. So the prosecutors theorize that Alberto had resentment towards Alma, that he had been sort of like a admirer of hers, that he wanted more than what she did as in a relationship, and that he's watched her flip between boyfriend and boyfriend, and he was just tired and he wanted to have her to himself, I guess. And that night he attacked her and took what he wanted from her, and then had to kill her because she would have turned him in. It took the jury only 90 minutes, guys, to come back with a guilty verdict. Alberto was sentenced to 60 years in prison, and that's where he still is. Unfortunately, due to the time cuts that they will be getting, or that he will be getting, he will probably only spend like less than half of that in prison, which is just a travesty because this girl was 22 years old. She had the rest of her life in front of her, and she had immigrated to America when she was 10 years old, lived with her grandmother and aunties, and she was just very much family oriented. She got a job when she was 15 to help out with the family, the household bills. She was very generous and very kind. She had like dreams to be a makeup artist, like in like Hollywood and the movie theater and stuff like that. It was just really just a sad waste that he, just because he wanted to date her and she didn't want to date him, that he decided to just take her life and kill her. It's just such a waste. And not only did he ruin this family, but also his own family, who now have to come to grips with the fact that he is a murderer and that he's going to be in prison for it. And two, you know, prison changes people. So the person that they knew going in is not going to be the person that they know coming out. So it's pretty much like they're mourning their son, uncle, brother too. What did you guys think about today's story? It was a sad one. I hate when they're so young like that. I mean, I hate to see anybody pass, but when they're so young like that and they have all these dreams and goals and ambitions, and they're working hard towards creating that to happen for themselves, and they're being responsible, that and just to be cut down like that so senselessly, it hurts a part of your soul or something. So definitely let me know down below what you think about Alberto and what he did. If you like these kinds of videos, make sure you give me a thumbs up so I will know to continue to make them. Okay, guys, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.